Prologue. The church silently prayed for the salvation of mankind. High Priest John, kneeling upon the altar of stones, earnestly vowed his service to the cause. Lining the great hall, the priest devoutly followed John's lead. King George broke the silence, his boots echoing through the hall as he approached the altar. He allowed John a moment to finish. "Your Grace," John said, then stood, turning to meet the king. "Pardon the intrusion," George replied, "but certain matters have been weighing on my mind as of late. We need to talk." John motioned him with a hand. "There's nothing to pardon," he said, smiling. "Please, follow me." Guided into a chamber, the king began to pace the room. John shut the door, noticing the king's unusual demeanor. "Tell me, what's troubling you?" he asked. "I'm not sure about the religion," George said. John reclined in a chair, sitting behind a desk. "Go on," he said, and folded his hands. "People will never deny the faith," George stated, meeting John's gaze. "They will," John assured him. "How?" George retorted. "Why would they forsake the belief of their fathers and take on the religion?" He furrowed his brow. "Because we tell them to?" "No, because God tells them to." George stopped pacing and turned to stare at John. "And if that's not enough," John said, leaning forward, "then we'll have to give them another reason to believe." George sat in a chair facing the high priest. "What do you propose?" "The kingdom's in upheaval," John noted. "The people are looking for something, for someone. They need a savior." "I'm no savior," George said. "Oh, but you are," John said. "You are exactly what the people need." George shook his head. "What would you have me do then?" John eased back into a chair. "Take control of what belongs to you." George cocked his head, curious. John continued. "Take the food. You have control over the food supply. Use it." "But the people are already suffering," George said. "I can't raise the taxes. I won't cast any more burden upon them." "It's not a burden," George said, smiling. "It's a generosity. The king's generosity." "Generosity?" the king mocked. He turned his head and chuckled. "I've counted you trusted friend and counselor for many years, John, but I fail to see the wisdom in all of this." John slowly nodded, gathering his thoughts. "The faith is good," he noted. "But where is God now? He has abandoned us, leaving his people with disease and drought in his wake." "I can hear them," John said, furrowing his brow. "I can hear the people crying in the streets, begging for mercy." "And they shall find it," George said. "Things will get better. They must believe." "They need the religion," John said. "And what good will come of it?" George asked. "It will give them hope. They need that more than ever." "Hope in what?" George said. "In the church? In man?" "Yes," John said, and stood, placing both hands on the desk. "People believe what they can see. They will see that the religion will not only take care of their spiritual needs, but their physical needs as well." "The king's generosity," George said, turning his head away. John eyed him. "You will give them food, protection, and something to believe in. They will worship you." "I don't want to be worshipped," George snapped. "That is the price to wear the crown, your grace," John humbly said. George met his gaze, stood, and paced the room. "If I commit to the religion, the rest of the kingdom will eventually be forced to commit as well. You know the independent cities won't stand for it." "Give them time," John said, then walked to stand by the king. "Everyone will eventually come to believe." "You sound so sure," George said, crossing his arms. I believe in the religion, John stated, and you have the order behind you. Here at the Capitol, the order is nothing more than high-ranking guards, George said. It is the prophet, along with the rest of the order at the Grand Highlands, that concerns me. They hold true to the faith. True, John noted, rubbing his chin. Let us hope that they stay out of it all. And if they do get involved, you must convince the prophet of our mission. John smiled at himself. Of God's mission. Is it God's mission? George asked. John clapped the king on the shoulder. Everything is, old friend, he said with a smile. It is all planned in accordance to his will.